Tide, 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 like the detergent. So soap that you wash your clothes with. Tide, 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 Tide. Could be a singer, could be a rapper, could be a movie star, but is Tide, Tide. Also a detergent, soap that you wash your clothes with. Tide, 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 Tide. Gotta have some Tide to wash your clothes. Tide, 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 like the ocean tide, ocean tide, 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 like detergent. Wash your clothes, wash your soap, wash your stuff. Tide, Tide, like the detergent. Tide, Tide, like the ocean current. Or could it be a rapper or singer? Tide, 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 like the ocean current. Tide, 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 like the detergent that you wash your clothes with. Tide, 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 Tide. Is it a rapper, a tide, or ocean tide, or detergent? Tide, Tide, what is Tide? Tide, Tide, what is Tide? Tide.